All right, we're live. Welcome to another episode of the James Nolan podcast. Let's dive right into it. Brett Baty, Luisangel Acuña, who should start at second base? Now, a few days ago, I wrote that they could actually roll with a platoon of Acuña and Baty. Now, there's a few reasons why. The other option outside of Baty and Acuña would be Donovan Walton. Donovan Walton is a left-handed bat, and we all know that Brett Baty will be on this opening day roster. But the big question is Luisangel Acuña going to be on the opening day roster? And here's why I said that will happen, why I think Acuña would make the opening day roster. And Tim Britton actually reported today that the Mets plan is to use a platoon of Baty and Acuña, and it makes all the sense in the world. Donovan Walton, left-handed bat. If you have Donovan Walton and Brett Baty, we're very left-handed oriented at that position. And the fact that Acuña has the speed on the base paths, the fact that McNeil will be back within 2 to 3 weeks of opening day, he's not going to be losing reps in AAA. So I know there's some people who are worried about Acuña losing reps in AAA. It's only 3 weeks. He might get sent down right when McNeil comes back. He might be a Band-Aid with Baty. And it could be Baty that gets sent down because really it just furthers the competition. Now, who won the competition so far in spring training? It's undoubtedly Brett Baty over Luisangel Acuña. But at the same time, isn't it great to see the competition at the actual level of MLB when it actually means something for these games? I think that's a better competition than spring training. Now, if they platoon, I think it makes all the sense in the world. Whoever performs stays up, even when McNeil comes back. If neither perform, you probably send Acuña back down to AAA. You let him get his reps, and McNeil takes over his starting job again. But if one out of two of these guys perform, then maybe McNeil becomes that super utility guy. I would love to just start the year off with McNeil healthy. Don't get me wrong. I still believe that McNeil can be an impact bat in this lineup. You know, considering he had the second highest OPS on the team after the All-Star break in 2024 behind Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil was the other guy that lifted this Mets lineup into the postseason last year. Like, we cannot forget that. So, adding to that, I would love to have McNeil start the year. But at the same time, if Baty or Acuña or even both perform, then I would much rather see McNeil in that super utility role, giving a Brandon Nimmo a day off, giving a Mark Vientos or a Brett Baty or Acuña a day off. You know, slide him in as the DH every now and then. Who knows? But the Mets' lives would become a whole lot easier. Not Carlos Mendoza's. It would make his job harder, but it's a good problem to have if Baty or Acuña or both perform well at the start of the season in this platoon role. And it makes all the sense in the world of platoon. Like I said, you know, we're going to have a hole at the catching spot. Like, we're not going to get much production, especially without Francisco Alvarez to start the year, out of our catcher. Like Louis Torrens, I love him defensively. Offensively, he's nothing special. We all know that. So let's say we're facing a right-hander. So then Brett Baty's in the lineup. Late game situation, you can pinch hit Acuña for Louis Torrens. Vice versa, if we're facing a left-hander, Acuña gets the start at second base. You can pinch Brett Baty. Pinch it with Brett Baty. So there's a lot of more flexibility, in my opinion, with Acuña on the roster over a guy like Donovan Walton. Because if you have Donovan Walton and Baty, then what do you do? What do you do? You're facing a lefty. What do you do? You know, I'm not too confident that. Listen, I'm confident that Baty can break out. I really am. I'm holding hope that Brett Baty does break out. And here's why I do think Brett Baty, even if McNeil wasn't hurt, I still think Baty should have gotten the job as that 26th guy on this roster. And I still think that there's a little bit of part of me that's like, you just give him the everyday job and don't even let this platoon happen. But it is best. It is in their best interest to kind of see. Now, Brett Baty, it's now or never for him. Like, we all know what Brett Baty can do in AAA. Brett Baty has raked in AAA. You take a look at Brett Baty's minor league numbers, even not even minor league overall, just AAA. You know, the highest level of the minors just last year in 2024 in 62 games. Guy had an 854 OPS, drove in 45 runs, had 16 home runs, like I said, in 62 games. And then you look at his numbers in AAA in 2023. A smaller sample size for sure because he played 108 games at the major league level. But in 26 games, he drove in 31 runs and hit 10 home runs, had a 298 batting average with a 1.013 OPS. Brett Baty has already conquered AAA. Brett Baty, at this point in his career, he's not a minor league ball player. He's either going to be a bench piece, or now it's his opportunity to prove that he's not just a bench piece. He can be a starting everyday second baseman. Third base is out of the question. Mark Vientos has that locked up. First base, Pete Alonso's back. He's got that locked up. Left field, Brandon Nimmo ain't going anywhere. Obviously, we have Juan Soto. I don't want Baty in center field. So Baty's best opportunity to be an everyday major leaguer is at second base, and he has to take it and run with it at the start of the year, even with McNeil out, even with him coming back. Baty has an opportunity to steal that job within these first couple weeks of the season. He has that opportunity. Acuña, I would say he has a lot more time. Like, if Acuña doesn't perform, I won't be worried. He can go back down to AAA. He can get his everyday reps. He's 22 years old. Baty's 25. Acuña has a lot more time to become an impact player on this team. And I'm not expecting Acuña to be a Ronald Acuña Jr. Anybody who's saying, oh, he's not Ronald Acuña, we don't need him to be Ronald Acuña. We already have Juan Soto. We already have Francisco Lindor. We already have Pete Alonso. We don't need Acuña to be his brother. But if Acuña could be a starting caliber player, an everyday player at the major league level, that would be a huge plus. Because his athleticism, I say it all the time, he's the best athlete. He has the most athleticism in the entire Mets organization. It's either him or Jet Williams. So I would love for Acuña to get, have a hot start to the season if he is platooning with Baty to start the season. Don't get me wrong, I would love that. But at the same time, I'm not going to panic. And I'm also not going to overhype Acuña's 14-game stretch last year. Like, he had a good 14 games. I don't know why everybody is just set on screw Jeff McNeil, screw Brett Baty. Give Luisangel Acuña the job at second base. Let him take it and run with it. Let him struggle. Let him get through those growing pains. Acuña had a 14-game stretch last year. We cannot overhype this kid off a 14-game stretch. We have to give him some breathing room. We have to give ourselves some breathing room as fans. Because I hate to say it. I really do hate to say this. But Baty was the better minor league player. No doubt about it. Baty has been the better player in spring training. No doubt about it. Acuña's numbers in AAA last year, not great at all. 258 batting average, 299 on base percentage, and a 654 OPS. That's not too good. In 2023, he didn't even reach the AAA level. But in 2023, he had a much better year, but only a 769 OPS compared to Baty, who had over 1,000 OPS. So I'm not going to buy in to 14 games and say Acuña is going to be a star. I think he has a ton of potential. But at the same time, we have to take a deep breath and realize 14 games is 14 games. And then you look at their numbers in spring training, comparing the two. Like, if this is a competition, Brett Baty has won the competition. There's no doubt about it that Brett Baty has won the competition over Luisangel Acuña. I'm going to read you Luisangel Acuña's numbers in spring training, and then I'm going to compare them to Baty's. So Acuña, who's played almost every single game in March so far, he did have a good performance today. He went 2 for 3 against Miami, but he's hitting 265 with a 294 slug percentage and only a 306 on base percentage. Now let's compare that to Brett Baty. And Brett Baty also, the one thing I am intrigued about, not so much the numbers because it is spring training and I don't want to overreact, but he's hitting 308 with a 538 slug percentage, 372 on base percentage. Those are great numbers. But the biggest number I like out of Brett Baty is he is not striking out at all. He's not. In spring training so far, since February 22nd, he's only striking out 3, 4, 5 times. 5 times. And he's played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 5 times he's striking out in 15 games. I really don't even care about his numbers, hitting 308 with a 538 slug percentage. Those are great. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm intrigued by is the kid's not striking out. He's not. And that was his biggest problem in the 3 years he's been with the Mets. Brett Baty has struck out a whole lot. Like, you look at his strikeout numbers. In 2022, he only played in 11 games. But he struck out 8 times. Had a 586 OPS. 2023, he struck out 109 times in 108 games. In 2024, in 50 games, he struck out 42 times. Baty cannot strike out the way he's had through his first 3 years in this league. So this is Brett Baty's golden opportunity because it's really his last chance. Like I said before, Acuña doesn't play well, he'll get another chance down the line. If Baty doesn't play well to start the year, he's not going to get another chance to earn or get a starting role. Even if another guy gets hurt down the line this year, Baty will not get that job. Let's say Baty struggles through the first 3 weeks. McNeil comes back, takes his job back. McNeil's playing well. McNeil gets hurt, let's say, in June. And Acuña's raking down in AAA. I don't see David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza talking to themselves and saying, do we want to give Baty another shot when every time we give this kid a shot at the major league level, he folds under pressure? No. They're going to give Acuña the shot. They're going to give a Jet Williams the shot. They're going to give a Ronnie Mauricio the shot. So this is Baty's last chance to make his mark. He got lucky. Don't get me wrong. He earned a spot on the opening day roster in spring training, but he did not earn a starting job. Not just, don't get me wrong, don't take anything away from his spring training performance, but he did not earn a starting job. He earned an opening day roster spot. So he's getting a golden opportunity right now. He needs to take it and run with it. Because if the best case scenario is McNeil doesn't start at second base when he comes back, because that means Baty is performing at a high level. We've seen him do it in the minors. You look at the numbers in the minors. They're jaw-dropping numbers. But for some reason in the majors, he hasn't been able to crack it. This is his time to prove everybody wrong and take that starting job and run with it, just like Mark Vientos did last year at third base. Because not only did Vientos steal it, he stole the job from Baty, he turned into a budding star. Mark Vientos took that job and ran with it and never let it go once he got that opportunity. And he had roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. Whereas every year for the past 3 years, we've gone into the regular season saying, this is it. Baty's going to break out and become our everyday third baseman, replace David Wright. And he couldn't. 3 times now. Vientos got 1 shot, took it, ran with it. Baty's got his 4th shot. He's got to take it and run with it. And if he doesn't, he's an everyday bench player or he's just a minor league player. And he'll get traded eventually from the Mets organization. So if he wants to stay with the Mets, he's got to perform well while McNeil is out. All right, let's talk about Clay Holmes getting the opening day start. Actually, before we talk about Clay Holmes, let's talk about Jesse Winker. Had a little bit of a stumble in his at-bat. Nothing too worried about him. He just cramped up. So Carlos Mendoza said he's not worried. Winker should be fine. We should see him in the next few days. Just cramped up. Nothing to worry about there. So we'll get past that. And then we'll talk about the rest of the offense in a little bit. But let's talk about Clay Holmes getting the opening day start. Now, does this mean Clay Holmes is our 1? No. I still think Kodai Senga is our number 1. But Clay Holmes could be eventually our number 1. And like I said, spring training, you don't want to buy in too much. But there's some guys you specifically want to watch and get excited about for spring training. Obviously, the young guys. But for a guy who's never been a starting pitcher, he's only got, I think, like 8 career starts from his first year in the league. And outside of that, he's never started again. Guy who's been a reliever for the past 7 years. Like, I'm excited every time Clay Holmes pitches. And the same goes for a guy like Max Kranick as well, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. He's having a good spring training performance. Also, Griffin Cannon. But then again, it's spring training. You don't want to buy in too much. But here's where I do buy in to Clay Holmes being a good starter. One, his ground ball rate. I've always talked about it. He's the best ground ball pitcher in baseball. He had a 64.6% ground ball rate last year. That's really good. Best in MLB. And then, obviously, last year, he was not a closer. Yes, he was a closer for the Yankees, and he almost had the most blown saves in MLB history last year. But at the same time, he shouldn't have been a closer. We saw after he was taken out of that closing role, he posted a sub 2.3 ERA. He had a phenomenal postseason with the Yanks. He's not a closer. If anything, as a reliever, I think he's a multi-inning guy, especially at this point in his career now. So worst case, Clay Holmes struggles as a starter. You put him in the pen and he's a multi-inning guy. But best case is Clay Holmes, let's say, has a sub 3.5 ERA. For that value, a 3-year deal, $38 million. We just saw what Luis Severino got. We just saw what Sean Manaea got from the Mets. Even mid-tier pitchers are getting a lot of money. $38 million a year for 3 years for a 31-year-old who might post a sub 3.5. And hell, I'll take the hot take and say I think he's going to post a sub 3 ERA. I think Clay Holmes can be that good. And you look at his spring training numbers so far. He's got a 1.29 ERA. He let up a run for the first time on March 15th, so just 2 days ago against Washington. 4.1 innings, 2 earned runs allowed, 3 hits allowed, 2 strikeouts. But so far this spring training, 1.29 ERA. He had 3 appearances in a row. His first 9.2 innings of work, he didn't allow a single run. And even in the hit column, he hasn't been getting hit. He's only allowed 5 hits. 5 hits across 13 innings. That's really good. But at the same time, it's spring training. But this guy has earned the opening day nod. He has earned the opening day nod. So I'm pumped for Clay Holmes. I think he can be really good. I think he can become a very valuable starter for this team. I think he's going to turn a lot of heads. I think a lot of Mets fans already know and are already excited that Clay Holmes could turn out to be a really good starting pitcher, and it would be a steal with the contract he's on. But, I mean, let's be real, guys. 2022, 2.54 ERA. 2023, 2.86 ERA. Even last year in his down year, he had a 3.14 ERA. So all he has to do is keep those numbers. Keep those numbers. Something he's done since he was a New York Yankee. He put up a 2.68 ERA with the New York Yankees. If Clay Holmes keeps those numbers and just stretches himself out 5, 6, sometimes 7 innings, Clay Holmes will be one of the best starters in the National League. And I know that's crazy to say, but all he has to do is pitch how he's pitched in the last 4 years, just now more. That's all he has to do. And then Clay Holmes can be one of the most valuable starters, contract-wise, in the entire league. In the entire league. I mean, you look at his xERA, 80th percentile. His fastball velo in the 88th percentile. This is last year. Whiff percentage, 84th percentile. Barrel percentage, 84th percentile. Ground ball percentage, obviously the highest MLB in the 100th percentile. And he's added another pitch. He's added more pitches. He's got a sinker. He's got a four seam. He's got a cutter. He's got a slider. He's got a sweeper. And now the new kick change, which looks really good. He's got six different pitches. He just threw 74 pitches the other day. He's ready to go. He's ready to go. I'm pumped up he got the opening day start. I hope he does well. I'm wishing the best for him because I do think Clay Holmes can prove a lot of Mets fans right and prove a lot of baseball fans wrong. And also, just to point it out, like everybody's clowning the Mets, right? Everybody's clowning the Mets for signing Clay Holmes and using him as a starter. Well, what about the other teams that have turned relievers into starters? What about those other teams? Like you look, Michael King, Seth Lugo, even Max Fried was a reliever before they came top-end starters. Like these are 2024 stats from relievers turned starters. Zach Little, former reliever, 3.63 ERA. Seth Lugo, 3 ERA, finished third in Cy Young voting last year in the American League. Christopher Sanchez had a 3.32 ERA. Michael King, 2.95 ERA. Ronel Blanco, a 2.80 ERA. And Clay Holmes put up better numbers than all those guys I just mentioned out of the bullpen. In the last 4 years with the Yankees, he put up a 2.68 ERA during his New York tenure. So you're telling me this guy can't be a good starter? I don't believe it. I think he can be, I think his floor is sub 3.5 ERA. And I think his ceiling, I would say, is a top 5 pitcher in the National League. And that would change the whole entire complexion of the Mets rotation. Because Sean Manaea will be back sometime, I'd say late April, early May. Carlos Mendoza has said he's had no setbacks. Knock on wood, that stays the same. So there's 2 front-end starters right there. We got Kodai Senga back. The key for him is just staying healthy. Because Kodai Senga was an NL All-Star in 2023, had a 2.98 ERA, which was 5th in the entire MLB, had over 200 strikeouts, was top 5 in K per 9. Kodai Senga was one of the best pitchers in baseball in 2023. So I don't want to hear it that Kodai Senga can't be an ace. If he's healthy, he's an ace. So that's 3 front-end starters once Manaea comes back, if Clay Holmes performs like he's performed. And then David Peterson, I mean, he's looked spectacular in spring training, pitched to a 2.90 ERA last year. And then between Griffin Cannon, almost said Seth Lugo. Whoa. Griffin Cannon, Paul Blackburn, and Tyler McGill. All we need is one of those guys. Blackburn, either McGill or Cannon. And 2 out of those 3 guys are good. Or let's say, like, I would say low 4s ERA, 2 out of 3 of those guys. We're going to win more games than we lose with those 3 guys. Because you look at this offense. I have a heart, even though their offense has looked terrible in spring training. But it's spring training. I mean, Aaron Judge is hitting below 100. And we all know what Aaron Judge is going to do. Same thing with Francisco Lindor. He's not hitting too well in spring training, but we all know what Francisco Lindor is going to do. We see it all the time. But this lineup, Juan Soto, Lindor, Alonso, Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, Jesse Winker. And then when Francisco Alvarez comes back in May, we got a lot of guys who can drive in runs on this team. We can score a lot of runs with this offense in 2025. So all those last 2 or first, to start the year, probably 3, Blackburn, McGill, and Cannon, all they have to do is have a low 4 ERA, which basically means 3 to 4 runs across 5-6 innings. And I have a hard time seeing the Mets not scoring more than 4 or 5 runs a game, maybe even 6 sometimes. So I would say we're going to win more games than we lose with those guys. But I still really like this rotation, though. Like I said, if Clay Holmes turns out to be a top guy, that's 3 top-end starters. David Peterson, who pitched to a 2.90 ERA, as your number 4. And then eventually, I really do think we're going to see Brandon Sproat on this team by late May, early June. And then you have a 5. And then you can have 6, maybe Griffin Cannon. He's having a great spring training. I want to talk about him next. But imagine your rotation is Senga, Manaea, Holmes, David Peterson, Brandon Sproat. I see why David Stearns didn't go out there and get a Corbin Burns, didn't go out there and get a Blake Snell. Why? Because pitchers get hurt. Tying yourself to those contracts. We just saw it with Garrett Cole. Blake Snell, I mean, he's injury prone. He gets injured all the time. Carlos Rodon missed half of 2023 with the Yankees. I get it. I see it. I see the vision, David Stearns. Let David Stearns cook. Griffin Cannon, one of those guys that David Stearns is trying to let Jeremy Hefner experiment with and see what he can get out of Cannon. And Griffin Cannon, my man, he struck out over 50% of the batters he faced today in his spring training outing. I mean, for a guy that he had over a 5 ERA last year, but he did make 32 starts. So that's one reason to like Griffin Cannon. But so far this spring, he's pitched to a .90 ERA. He let up his first run of spring training today against the Tampa Bay Rays, but he still was fantastic. He struck out 9 guys in the 4.2 innings of work, only allowed 3 hits. The 1 run was a home run. March 10th against St. Louis, 3.2 innings, 5 strikeouts, and then 1.2 innings against Houston in his first spring start, 2 strikeouts, only allowed 2 hits. So far, across 3 appearances, Griffin Cannon has only allowed 6 hits. Griffin Cannon's looking really well. Like I said, it's only spring training. I don't want to buy in too much because, especially considering last year, he had a 5.19 ERA. But most years, 3 out of 5 of his years, he's pitched in the mid-4s to low-4s ERA. 2020, 3.99 ERA. 2023, 4.32. So even if he's a 2020 or 2023 version of himself, I think we're going to win more games than we lose with Griffin Cannon. Because like I said, this offense is going to score. And then the bullpen, I mean, A.J. Minter's on track for opening day. Daniel Nunez looked phenomenal in his return to the bump today. Edwin Diaz, I really think Edwin Diaz can get back to being one of the best closers in baseball. We cannot forget he missed the entire 2023 season. So to expect Edwin Diaz to come back in 2024 after missing an entire year and just going back to what he did in 2022, I think that was unfair. But now, after another year under his belt, I think Edwin Diaz can get back to being a shade of what he was in 2022. And if that happens, this bullpen will look phenomenal. It will look phenomenal. Jose Budo, we know he can pitch. Daniel Nunez, he can pitch. Question for him is health. AJ Minter, we know he can pitch, especially in the NL East. He's been one of the best 2.88 ERA through his career in the NL East. And then Edwin Diaz. And then Reed Garrett. Reed Garrett's just got to throw strikes. Reed Garrett has insane stuff. Reed Garrett made Shohei Ohtani look like a fool in the NLCS last year. We all know Reed Garrett can be a dominant relief pitcher, but he just needs to throw strikes. He needs to get his control down. If he gets his command down, Reed Garrett can be a top reliever in baseball as well. So we'll see. I like the outlook of this Mets team heading into 2025. I really do. And I'm excited. We are just 10 days away from Mets opening day, where Clay Holmes gets the ball against the Houston Astros. You got to be excited. You got to be excited. All right. Let's talk about the Yankees for a little bit, and then I'll touch on the Knicks. No football today. I'm footballed out, to be honest. It was a fun first week of free agency. Aaron Rodgers is still not on the Giants or the Steelers. It is, that's basically it. That's my football update. Draft's coming up. I'll give one prediction for football. I think the Giants will have Russell Wilson signed within this next week, and I think they end up drafting Shadur Sanders at number 3. What I think they should do is sign Aaron Rodgers, but I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Steeler. And then I would draft Abdul Carter, because Abdul Carter, I mean, he's basically a guarantee to be a force to be reckoned with in the NFL. And I think, you look at the Giants' Super Bowl wins, it's the defense, man. It's the defense. They've always had a good defense when they've won Super Bowls. They've always have. But let's talk about the Jets for 2 seconds, then we'll hop into these Yankees. Jets, Justin Fields signing. I like it. I love it. I do love it. I think the upside is still there. My Jets. I'm excited for the Jets here to get started. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think they're going to be a fun team. If they're a playoff team, it will be the best football season of my entire life, because I have not seen the Jets in the playoffs since Mark Sanchez. And I was very young, so I wasn't as big of a Jets fan as I am now. I would love to see Garrett Wilson in a playoff game. A Sauce Gardner, who's probably going to be the top paid cornerback at some point this offseason, in a playoff game. They did release C.J. Mosley. They created some cap space. They got some more flexibility. So that's another update there. But let's stick to baseball today. Let's talk about these Yankees. Paul Goldschmidt, sore back. Not too worried about him. He's saying, he's been dealing with it going into spring training. He expects to still be ready and going for opening day. But what I really want to talk about the Yankees is their young guys, because we all know Aaron Judge can perform. I think Cody Bellinger will perform. I think Jazz Chisholm will perform. I talked about it on the last pod. Jazz Chisholm was in a terrible Miami Marlins lineup. And it's no shock to see a talent like him come to the Yankees, have over an 800 OPS, have over a 270 batting average, hit multiple home runs. There is no, I would say, surprise in seeing Jazz do so well with the Yankees, especially in the lineup they had with Juan Soto, Aaron Judge. Even Gleyber Torres, you can throw him in there too if you want. Like, he was in a good lineup. He was in the best lineup of his life last year, and he finally played like everybody thought he could. He's only 27 years old. So I think another year in the same lineup as an Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt. I'm not saying Goldschmidt is going to be the 2022 self of him, but he's better than Anthony Rizzo, let's be real. Even if he puts up the numbers he did last year, which were subpar, but still better than Anthony Rizzo. Like, I feel like we're not talking about Jazz too much because Jazz in this lineup, in this new, I would say, era of the Yankees, where it's not so much the traditional Yankees. It's, they're allowed to grow beards now. Like, it almost feels like they're allowing the Yankees to have fun. And there's I would say, nobody on the Yankees outside of Aaron Judge has more fun playing baseball. You could even say Jazz Chisholm Jr. has more fun playing baseball than anybody on this team. Like, the kids love to use the word aura. I'm not going to lie. Jazz Chisholm Jr. has aura when he's out there. He's got swag. He's got the confidence. He's got the attitude. And he put up the numbers last year with the Yankees. So I do think Jazz, like I said before, in this lineup, compared to the Miami Marlins lineup he was in, with the protection he has now, I think Jazz could be a much better player than we've grown accustomed to through his first few years in the league. But, so like I said, Jazz, Judge, Bellinger, I think we're going to get what we expect out of them. Paul Goldschmidt, if he's better than he was last year, that's great. If he's the same as he was last year, that's still good because, like I said, it's an upgrade over Anthony Rizzo. But they're going to be counting on a lot of young guys. Austin Wells, Anthony Volpe, Oswaldo Cabrera, Ben Rice, Jason Dominguez. They're counting on 5 young bats in a year after they were 3 wins away from holding up their 28th World Series championship. Because we all know the pitching has taken a massive hit, losing Louis Heel to miss at least probably the first half of the year. Clark Schmidt, a little bit of an injury scare, but he said he's going to be ready for that first week of the season. And then obviously Garrett Cole. That hurts the rotation for sure. But they still got a really good bullpen. I would say Aaron Judge, Jazz Chisholm, Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt. We're going to get what we expect out of those 4 guys. But it's the 5 young guys, the 5 other young guys. Wells, Volpe, Dominguez, Rice, and Oswaldo Cabrera. And let me tell you, I know it's only spring training, but like I said, spring training is for starters, for relievers, for guys coming back from injuries, and it's for the young guys. And so far, Ben Rice has hit 3 home runs. 3 home runs in his last 4 games. Ben Rice is now hitting .279 with a .558 slug percentage and a .340 on-base percentage. Back-to-back games with a home run. His last 3 out of 4 games, 3 home runs, 3 multi-hit games. He's on a 5-game hitting streak right now. Ben Rice is performing, and when I love the idea that Ben Rice can be an impact bat in this lineup, and here's why. Similar to Brett Baty. Not so similar because he hasn't got as many opportunities at the major league level, but same age, and Ben Rice rakes in the minors. Rakes. Absolutely rakes. In 2023, let's go 2022, his first real year in the minors at single A. 68 games. I know it's single A, but still. 68 games, 810 OPS, 36 RBIs, 9 home runs in those 68 games. Then across 3 different levels in 2023, which is always a good sign, went from low A to high A to double A. 73-game stretch, 20 home runs total, a .324 batting average, 68 runs driven in 73 games. Like I said, the .324 batting average, a 1.048 OPS. His slug percentage was .615. His on-base percentage was .434. And then flip it to 2024 in AA and AAA. I'm going to get into his specific AAA numbers in a second, but you combine those two across 80 games. He had .273 with 24 home runs, .400 on base percentage, .568 slug percentage, which equates to a .968 OPS. And like I said, 24 home runs in 80 games, 59 RBIs in 80 games. But his AAA numbers last year, only 30 games in AAA, and he had 12 home runs, drove in 33 runs in those 30 games, hit .294 at a .428 on-base percentage, a slug percentage of .661, which equates to an OPS of 1.088. Ben Rice, in the minors, rakes. But now at this point in his career, at 25 years old, like Brett Baty at this point, he's got a golden opportunity to take that DH spot and run with it. And so far in spring training, he's looked really good. Like I said before, last 4 games, 3 home runs, 3 multi-hit games. Total stats, .279 batting average, .558 slug percentage, .340 on base percentage, well over an .890 OPS. Ben Rice in spring training is doing it. I'm excited to see what Ben Rice can do at the start of 2025. But it's not just him. It's not just him raking in spring training. Oswaldo Cabrera, who had a home run yesterday. Oswaldo Cabrera now in spring training, hitting .333 with a .400 on base percentage, a flat out .900 OPS. But just yesterday, he had a home run, went 3 for 3 against Tampa Bay. I mean, if anybody's worried about Oswaldo Cabrera, I completely understand. So far throughout his career, he has done squat. In 2024, he had .247 with a .661 OPS. In 2023, he had a .211 batting average with a .574 OPS. 2022, .247 with a .741 OPS. Now, I just compared Ben Rice to Brett Baty, but really it's Oswaldo Cabrera that really compares to Brett Baty. Because it's now or never for Oswaldo Cabrera. It is now or never. He's raking in spring training, but it's only spring training. We've seen it before. You come to the major leagues and you do squat. So for Oswaldo Cabrera, it's now or never. Now or never. Because they got Everson Pereira in the minors. They got Oswald Peraza ready to take his job. Jorbert Vivas, who's also having a really good spring training. It's now or never for Oswaldo Cabrera. But Anthony Volpe, got to touch on him a little bit. Volpe has been allowed to fail. Listen, he's a great defender, one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. But he, not like Cabrera and Ben Rice, Volpe is struggling in spring training. He's hitting .139, a .184 on base percentage, a .306 slug percentage. It is so bad right now for Anthony Volpe. I'm hitting the panic button on Anthony Volpe going into 2025. I'm hitting the panic button. He's played 160 games in 2024, played 159 games in 2023. He hit over 20 home runs in his rookie year. I get it. That's great. He won a Gold Glove. I get it. That's great. But in 2023, he also struck out 167 times. In 2023, he also had a .283 on base percentage. 283. That's terrible. And then in 2024, he struck out 156 times with a .243 batting average, a .293 on base percentage. And to factor that in, to talk about the strikeouts, struck out 156 times, walked only 41 times. He can be the best defensive shortstop of all time. If he's not hitting, if he's putting up on base percentage below 300, if he's striking out 160 plus times, like Pete Alonso, we called it a down year because he struck out 172 times, I believe, last year. And this kid, who everybody's glamoring about, who is portraying him as the next Derek Jeter, struck out over 165 times in his rookie year, and then he struck out 159 times just last year. Anthony Volpe needs to hit. He needs to hit. You can be a great defensive shortstop, but you need to hit. I hate comparing him to the Mets right now, but look at Ruben Tejada. Ruben Tejada was a great defensive shortstop. He hit 250. That's all Volpe needs to do. That's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to hit 300 plus. He doesn't need to hit 30 plus home runs. All he needs to do is hit 250 plus. Have a 330 on base percentage. And then he's going to win you a lot more games than he loses you because his defense is off the charts. But if he doesn't hit and he doesn't get on base, if he puts up the numbers he has through his first 2 years, then Anthony Volpe might not be on this roster in 2026. I hate to break it to you guys, but that's just the fact. You cannot be on a team that has World Series aspirations and have an on-base percentage less than 300. You just cannot. You can't. I don't care how good of a defensive shortstop you are. You cannot put up those numbers. Oswaldo Cabrera, who I just said, it's now or never for him. He has put up better offensive numbers than Anthony Volpe. So, now or never for him. Austin Wells, let's talk about the number 4th young guy, and then we'll get into Dominguez, who's also been tearing the cover off the ball. But Austin Wells having a very good spring training. 4 out of 5 of these young guys I'm about to talk about are having very good spring trainings. Austin Wells had a 103 OPS plus last year. Played 115 games, kind of tired out at the end. Burned out at the end, I should say. But, hopefully with a season under his belt, we can see what Austin Wells is really made of. Because he's a guy, like some of the other guys I mentioned, who went ballistic in the minor leagues. So far in spring training, he has a 1.122 OPS, a 412 on base percentage, a 710 slugging percentage. He's hitting 355. He only has 3 home runs, but that's still pretty good considering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games. 3 home runs in 11 games. Yeah, 3 home runs in 11 games, 412 on base percentage, 710 slug percentage, 355 batting average, over an 1100 OPS. Austin Wells is doing exactly what everybody expected him to do in spring training, and that's tear the cover off the ball. Now, if he can hit 280 plus, we all know he's got the pop. He does have pop. Just last year, he drove in 55 runs, had 13 home runs. If he hits 280 plus, he pops off 20 homers. Austin Wells is going to put himself in the conversation as one of the best catchers in baseball. He has that potential. All he has to do is go out there and do it. And I'm going to say it right now, even as a Mets fan, Austin Wells is going to have a very good 2025 season. I think out of all these guys I've mentioned, the guy I have the most confidence in, out of Cabrera, out of even Dominguez, who I'm about to talk about, out of Ben Rice, and yes, obviously Austin Wells. Out of those 4 guys I mentioned, the guy who I'm most confident of taking a successful spring training and carrying it over to the regular season, it's Austin Wells. I think Austin Wells is going to have a very good year for the Yankees. And if he does, that's game-changing. That is game-changing. Because after I talk about Dominguez, I'm going to talk about this. If 1 out of the 5 of those guys provides a lift to this Yankees lineup, that'll be huge. If 2 out of 5 guys provide a lift to this Yankees lineup, they're going to be one of the best lineups in the American League, maybe even the MLB. I would say probably a top 5 to 10 lineup. Right now on paper, I'd say top 7-ish. I'd put the Dodgers over them. I'd put the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets. That's 4 right there. I'd probably put the Red Sox at this point over their lineup. That's 5. So, yeah, 6 or 7, I'd say, is where the Yankees are at right now. But if 2 out of 5 of those guys step up and they provide, then the Yankees will enter the conversation as a top 5 lineup. No doubt about it. They will surpass the Red Sox, in my opinion. For the first time in a long time, the Yankees are counting on a lot of young players. A lot of them. All right, let's talk about the Martian, Jason Dominguez. Jason Dominguez is not here for defense. He's not. Every time he makes an error, everybody, gives him crap. And I get it. You don't want to be the number one prospect for the Yankees and making terrible plays in left field. But he's not here to play defense. He's here to hit. So far in spring training, 256 batting average, but a 512 slugging percentage. He's hit 2 home runs in his last 3 games. In his last 3 games, he's got 5 RBIs. He's got pop, dude. Dominguez has a ton of pop. Now, I don't want to overhype him and say, talked about the way I talked about Austin Wells heading into his rookie year. Like, he is only 22 years old, but if he lives up to his potential, man, I mean, you look at his numbers last year across single A, double A, and triple A, only 58 games, hit 11 home runs, 35 RBIs, hit 314, had an 880 OPS. In 2023, across 2 different leagues, 265 batting average, 802 OPS, 377 on base percentage, had 76 RBIs, 15 home runs in 118 games. But Dominguez can steal. Dominguez in the 2023 minor league season had 40 stolen bases. Across his minor league career, he holds a 373 on base percentage. All Dominguez really needs to do is get on base. He can hit 240. He can even hit 230. If he gets on base 35% of the time, Dominguez is going to be a valuable asset offensively for this team. Like, we got to, really, when I compare Dominguez to is their left fielder from last year, Alex Verdugo. Let's just say it's going to be easy for him, in my opinion, to put up better numbers than this. Alex Verdugo last year, 13 home runs, 233 batting average, 647 OPS, 291 on base percentage. So let's just play the over-under, and we'll use the over-under of Verdugo's numbers from last year in left field. 647 OPS. I'm going to say Dominguez is going to have better than a 647 OPS. 356 slugging percentage from Verdugo last year. I'm going to say Dominguez is going to have a better slug percentage than 356. 291 on base percentage. Dominguez should have a much better on base percentage than Verdugo did last year. Like I said, he had a 377 on base percentage in his minor league career. Batting average, 233 is what Verdugo hit. That one is tricky. Dominguez can work walks, but so far in spring training, he's hit 250. I'd say still over, but I wouldn't go drastically over like I would in the other categories I've mentioned. 61 RBIs and 13 home runs is what Verdugo did. RBI-wise, 61 for a rookie, hitting at the bottom of the order. I'm going to say either even or a little bit below, not too much below, but I'd say he'd have over 50 RBIs, 13 home runs. I think Dominguez can have more than 13 home runs. I think we're going to see him in the 17 to 23 range for home runs. That's what I would say. So, yeah, Dominguez, upgrade. Center field, I mean, Aaron Judge was your center fielder last year. Bellinger is a downgrade, not only from Judge, but from Soto, because Bellinger's really replacing Soto. Still a good hitter, still a respectable player, but he's not no Juan Soto. Look at catching. Austin Wells. I'd say this version of Austin Wells going into 2025 is better than what Austin Wells was going into 2024. First base, clearly better. Paul Goldschmidt, better. Jazz Chisholm over Gleyber Torres, yes. Anthony Volpe over Anthony Volpe. I mean, like I said, it's now or never for Volpe. It's now or never. He could be the greatest defensive shortstop in the world. If he has less than a 300 on base percentage like he has in his first 2 years, he might not be on this team in 2026. So Volpe needs to hit. Like I said, he doesn't need to go off. He doesn't need to hit 300 plus, hit 25 plus home runs. He just needs to hit like 10 plus home runs. He needs to hit like 250. He needs to just have an on-base percentage over 330, and he will be one of the best, most valuable shortstops, I should say, in the league. Third base, Oswaldo Cabrera over, well, he's basically replacing Gleyber Torres. That's tough, but just keep your fingers crossed and hope for the best. That's about it. So they had, I would say, 2 downgrades. And those 2 downgrades, one is not so big because it's Gleyber Torres. The other is huge. It's astronomical. Juan Soto losing a guy with 41 home runs last year. Second in Major League Baseball in walks, only behind Aaron Judge. Finished top 3 in MVP voting. Losing that guy sucks. It hurts. But they're still in the American League. They still had an upgrade with Paul Goldschmidt. They still had an upgrade with Jazz Chisholm Jr. at second base over Gleyber Torres. But then obviously with Oswaldo Cabrera replacing Torres, it's kind of a downgrade there. But I mean, they have a better Austin Wells, in my opinion, going into this year. Stanton or Ben Rice, I'd probably take Stanton. Although, like I said, Ben Rice, keep your fingers crossed and hold out hope because he raked in the minor leagues. And I mean, so far in spring training, he's raking. Bullpen, I'd say they've had an upgrade. They brought back Tim Hill. You got Luke Weaver coming back. I would love Jay Cousins to start the year on the Yankees opening day roster, but that's not going to happen. He'll be on the IL. But still, Devin Williams joining this pen as the closer. We got to remember, Clay Holmes, as great as I love Clay Holmes, as much as I do, he wasn't a closer. He was a terrible closer last year. Devin Williams, he's one of the best closers, if not the best closer in baseball. That's an upgrade. That's going to be huge. So you take away the losses and blown saves last year. Let's say you subtract it by 10. They're going to win more games just from Devin Williams. And they still have Aaron Judge in the lineup. So that's the big key. And starting rotation, it's it sucks that it's not what we expected the Yankees rotation to be. But Max Fried still exists. Carlos Rodon won 16 games last year, pitched to a sub-4 ERA. And at this point, I'm a big due guy. I'm a big numbers guy. Carlos Rodon's due for a big year. Hasn't looked great in spring training, but still due for a big year. Marcus Stroman, if he could pitch like he did in the first half of last year, that's going to be big. Clark Schmidt posted I think a 2.84 ERA, I want to say, last year. Only had 13 games, but luckily he said he's going to be ready for the first week of the season, even though he's had some injury scares. And then Will Warren getting his shot. Kind of similar to the Mets, their back end guys. Will Warren doesn't need to be an ace. Will Warren just needs to be a number 5. And I think that is huge for a guy as young as Will Warren. Because a lot of prospects come up and they just expect go. Go, 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 go. Let's see what you got. Will Warren, he's not going to have that much pressure. I mean, I can't say he's not going to have that much pressure. I don't play in the major leagues. There's probably a ton of pressure, but still, he's compared to other guys. I wouldn't put too much pressure on him as a fan. And then, I mean, like I said, Aaron Judge, he's the key guy. As long as Aaron Judge is healthy, I think this Yankees team gets back to the playoffs. I think they win the AL East, even though I think the Red Sox have a better lineup, maybe a better team overall on paper right now. We all know the team on opening day isn't the team that finishes the year. Like I said on the last pod, the Yankees cannot panic and make moves and overpay when teams know they're desperate for a starter, when teams know they're desperate for a third baseman. Wait and play it out. Because if Ben Rice produces, if Austin Wells produces, if Oswaldo Cabrera, if Anthony Volpe, if Jason Dominguez, if 3 out of those 5 guys, if 2 out of those 5 guys produce, the Yankees will have a very good lineup. Same thing with the rotation. If Rodon, Stroman, Will Warren, or Clark Schmidt, if 2 out of those 4 guys, let's say 3 out of 4, changes the whole entire complexion of the rotation. And I still think even if, let's say 3 out of 4 of those guys are pitching well, you're going to get Louis Heel back at some point in the year. And you're going to trade for a starting pitcher at the deadline, or at least, I should say before. Sandy Alcantara could become available. Dylan Cease could come available, obviously, for a little bit cheaper than what the Padres want for him now. Michael King, maybe he makes his return to the Bronx. We got a lot of time. Eric Fetty, I mean, he had a great year last year. Maybe Cardinals want to sell high on him. Got a lot of time. A lot of time to still improve this roster. Because the best part about baseball is you can improve your roster in the season much more than any other sports can do the same. In the NFL, you can make NBA, NFL, NHL, you can make trades. Don't get me wrong. But in baseball, teams aren't afraid to trade superstars. And we just saw the Giants just keeping it local. Giants a few years ago didn't want to trade Saquon because they couldn't fathom the idea of trading their third overall pick. But in baseball, I mean, a few years ago, the Yankees were like, yeah, you got the Cubs, you want to roll this Chapman? Sure, take him. We'll just sign him at the end of the year. I mean, Fernando Tatis got traded. Juan Soto got traded twice. Think about that. Juan Soto. Compare him to another player, I'd say in the NFL, is he Patrick Mahomes? Hell no. I'd say Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani is Patrick Mahomes. Juan Soto's still up there, though. I would say Juan Soto's at least a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen. The Bengals or Bills would never trade those guys. So baseball is one of those sports where you can significantly improve your roster in season. And that's why I think the Yankees, going into opening day, they're going to look drastically different come July. Come July, I think the Yankees, we're going to be talking about them as World Series contenders again. Mainly because they play in the American League, which is not as great as the National League. I mean, look at the National League. Atlanta Braves, Philadelphia Phillies, just in the Mets division alone. Los Angeles Dodgers, Arizona Diamondbacks, Milwaukee Brewers, Chicago Cubs now trying to make a run for it. We'll see, man. We'll see. I think the Yankees shouldn't panic now. They got time to still improve this roster. You still got Aaron Judge. You got 3 out of the 5 of Austin Wells, Anthony Volpe, Jason Dominguez, Oswaldo Cabrera, or Ben Rice. 3 out of 5 of those guys produce. Even if 2 out of 5 of those guys produce, lineup becomes a lot better. Same thing with the rotation. 2 out of 4 of the back-end guys after Max Fried, Rodon, Stroman, Warren, Schmidt. If 2 out of those 4 guys pitch well, Yankees are going to win a lot more games than they lose. They will be fine come the trade deadline or even before. Make a trade for a Sandy Alcantara or a Zach Eflin or a Eric Fetty or Dylan Cease. Bring back Michael King. Who knows? There's still a lot of time to improve this team. Yankees going into 2025, the expectation should not be anything less than a World Series, even with Stanton likely missing the entire year. Even with Heel on the IL for half the year and Jake Cousins, same thing. And yes, obviously with Garrett Cole going down with Tommy John. You know, just a few years ago, the Rangers lost their best pitcher, lost a pitcher they gave 5 years, $125 million to. We all know that man's name, Jacob deGrom. And what did the Rangers do? They improved at the deadline, and they won the freaking World Series. So anybody saying that the Yankees aren't World Series contenders right now, yeah, you could say that. But come July, we all know what's going to happen. I'm going to be here talking about it, just like I was last year talking about it. The Yankees are the favorites to win the World Series, at least out of the American League. Last year, I would say I really thought that the Yankees were going to win it all. I thought with the pitching they had, I thought with Aaron Judge, the way he was playing, with Juan Soto, trading for Jazz Chisholm, I really thought they would do it. Unfortunately, part of my plan was seeing the Los Angeles Dodgers have an early exit like they had in the past few years. But that didn't happen. They ran into the LA Dodgers. All right, that's it for today. Strictly baseball. Going to go live tomorrow talking Knicks, Jets, and Giants mainly. We're also going to talk about some baseball, obviously, especially if more updates come out. But that's it for today's show, guys. Thank you for watching, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or X. If you want to hop over to YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. That's it for me, guys. Deuces.